So you've applied for spousal sponsorship, and now while you wait for your spousal application to finish processing, you want to apply for open work permit as well. So let's find out who is eligible for open work permit as a spousal sponsorship applicant, when can you apply, which portal do you apply in, the overview of forms and the specialized document requirements for this work permit application, and some common questions such as what status does open work permit give you, and finally, is it even worth the effort to apply for open work permit, or should you just wait for the spousal sponsorship application to come through? So as a spousal sponsorship applicant who's already applied for permanent residence, in order to be eligible for this open work permit, you have to meet these 3 conditions. Number 1, you must have already submitted the spousal sponsorship application. Number 2, you must have received the acknowledgement of receipt email or the AOR email for your sponsorship application. Meaning this email, which usually goes to the sponsor, has the sponsor's UCI up top and the application number starting with F. And it clearly says this sentence that this confirms that your application to sponsor a member of the family class or spouse or common law partner in Canada class has been received. This is AOR, so you need to have that. And finally, number 3, you, the principal applicant, must be living in Canada with your sponsor under the same roof on a valid temporary residence status. So you're going to start here. This is their instruction page for open work permit for spousal sponsorship applicants. So on this page, if you scroll down under how to apply for open work permit, it's going to ask you if you have a valid residency status. So obviously you will have to select yes because that's a requirement. And then it will tell you once you have your AOR for spousal sponsorship, you can apply. So we already covered this. And then it will also give you specialized instructions and the additional documents required for your open work permit under this stream. So when you apply for spousal sponsorship, you will either apply as an inland applicant, which is the spouse or common law partner in Canada class, meaning from inside Canada, or you will apply as an outland applicant or a family class applicant, which could be done from inside or outside Canada. So whatever class you apply under, this open work permit option is available to both, as long as you meet the 3 conditions that we talked about. So basically, whether you've submitted your spousal sponsorship application inland or outland, you must be living in Canada with your sponsor under the same roof in order to be eligible for the open work permit. This is the 3rd requirement that we saw when we talked about the criteria for open work permit. So coming back to this page, it will also tell you where you can apply for this open work permit. So the link to the IRCC secure account is here. This is your GCK account. And it will also tell you the specialized documents you need for this open work permit. So let's first review this GCK process and the forms and documents, and then we'll come back to this page and review these additional documents. So you'll start here. This is the IRCC secure account or the GCK account, also known as the MyCIC account. This is where you apply for open work permit. So the applicant, meaning the one who is applying for open work permit, should create the account on this GCK portal and then submit the application themselves. But let's say you're using the sponsor as the unpaid representative. Even in that case, you, the principal applicant, should be the one who creates the account in this GCK and submits the application themselves. Now, you and the sponsor can obviously share the same account, and the sponsor can help you in doing the application, but it should be from the principal applicant's account. So inside your GCK, if you scroll down under Start an Application, you'll click on Apply to come to Canada. Leave this personal reference code blank, it doesn't matter. Select the first option, Visit, Visa, Study or Work Permit. Then it's just going to ask you a few questions to determine your eligibility. So the first one is, what would you like to do in Canada? So obviously this is work. Then how long are you planning to stay in Canada? So you'll select this option, temporarily more than 6 months. Then select the code that matches the one on your passport. So this is pretty straightforward. Then what is your current country of residence? So it has to be Canada, otherwise you're not eligible for this open work permit. Then do you have a family member who's a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident and is 18 years of age or older? Assume my wife is the applicant. So her family member, which is her spouse, becomes me. So I am obviously a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident. In this case, I am a permanent resident and I am above the age of 18. So this answer is yes. Then date of birth of my wife, the applicant, pretty straightforward. Then are you a permanent resident of United States? So this was no for my wife. Then what is your current immigration status in Canada? So assume that my wife is in Canada on a valid visitor visa. So she's going to select visitor here. Then it asks, does any of the following apply to you? So out of all these options, this 4th option, I am applying for an open work permit under an active public policy or pilot program announced by IRCC is the one that will apply to you. because this open work permit for spousal sponsorship applicants is an active public policy which was announced February 2023. So that's why, because this fourth option applies to you, you will select yes here. Then are you a spouse or common law partner or dependent child of a person who falls under any of these categories? So this is going to be no, because you're the spouse of a person who's either a permanent resident or a Canadian citizen. And the last one similarly is also going to be no for majority of the applicants. For my wife, this is also no. What is your marital status? My wife would answer married. Province or territory of destination, so you can just select whatever province you're already living in with your sponsor, and then based on those selections you get this result. You are eligible to apply for open work permit. Now you hit continue and then you answer a few more questions to get your personalized document checklist for this open work permit. Then it asks, are you accompanying a family member who has status in Canada? This does not apply to you. You are already in Canada living with your sponsor who's a permanent resident or Canadian citizen. So there's no question of accompanying here. You can simply answer no here. Then when does your status in Canada expire? So if you're on visitor visa, this is the expiry of your visitor status. Keep in mind, the expiry date of your visitor status is not this expiry date which is on the stamp of your passport for your visitor visa. This is the expiry date of the multiple entry visa. This is the longer expiry date. This is simply the date until when you can enter Canada on a visitor visa. This date is usually 10 years in the future or until the expiry of your passport. So don't put that date here. So what they're asking is how long can you currently stay in Canada on your legal status. So this date, this expiry is usually 6 months from the day that you entered Canada, unless otherwise indicated by the officer on your passport at the time of your entry. So first of all, you can check your passport for a stamp that may look something like this. So if the officer stamped your passport at the port of entry, and let's say they put an expiry date on that stamp, then you can use that expiry date as the expiry of your status. Now, if the officer did not put an expiry date in your stamp, but simply put a seal and an entry date, or maybe they didn't even put the entry date, but you know when you entered Canada, so the expiry of your current status would be 6 months from the day that you entered Canada. So let's say you entered Canada on January 1st, 2024. So the expiry you can assume to be on June 30 or July 1st, 2024. That would be 6 months. Now, if you have a valid visitor record with you, which looks something like this, the visitor record will clearly have the issue date and the expiry date. So the expiry date will be around 6 months from the issue date. So you can put that expiry date here also if you have a visitor record. If you have a valid study permit or a work permit, then those permits will also have expiry dates. So you can put those expiry dates here. Now, don't worry too much about this medical question, because as a spousal sponsorship applicant, you will already be requested your medicals at some point during your application. So let's say you have sent your spousal sponsorship application, they have not requested your medicals yet. So they will eventually request it. And once you get the medicals done, they will be able to connect those medicals with this open work permit application. Now, if your spousal sponsorship application has already requested medicals and you've already given those, then you can answer yes here. And then they will be able to connect the open work permit medicals with the spousal sponsorship. So again, you won't be requested medicals again, most likely. So again, going back to my wife's case, she's in Canada on a TRV. She hasn't done any medicals yet. So she will select no here. And then it basically tells you which countries need medicals. So if you click on this designated list of countries and search for your country, if it shows up, then you will require medical. For example, India is in the list of designated countries. So my wife is from India. So she's just going to answer yes here because she fits into these categories. Don't worry, they are not going to duplicate your medicals just because you answered yes. Then for this question, my wife can just select no. She does not have to do an upfront medical for this open work permit and then repeat the medicals for spousal sponsorship again. Then do you want to submit an application for a family member? So this is no, this is just my wife's application. She's not applying for anybody else. Are you giving someone access to your application? So let's say my wife is just handling it completely by herself. She's not appointing any representative. So this will be no. In the past 10 years, have you given fingerprints? So my wife came to Canada on a TRV, and for that she was required to give fingerprints. So she will select yes here. Fees associated? Yes. Are you able to make a digital copy? Yes. Will you be paying online? Yes. Then you basically review your answers. If you hit continue again, you will get to your personalized document checklist. So you'll first finish through this document checklist, and then you will come back to this page, which we saw in the beginning, for open work permit instructions for spousal sponsorship applicants, and then upload the additional documents that this page mentions in this client information section right here. Alright, so first up is the main application form 5710. So now I'm going to go very quickly over this form, But just FYI, all instructions on how to fill this form can be found in this guide 5553. I'm going to link it in the description below. If you scroll down under completing the form, under 5710, most of the generic instructions are here. So go through these slowly and carefully and you should be good. And for the specifics about this open work permit for a spousal sponsorship applicant, let's cover those quickly right now. So again, we'll assume my wife, the main applicant, is applying for open work permit. So she's basically filling this form out for herself. So first up is UCI. Remember, this is the principal applicant's UCI, not the sponsor. Sponsor has nothing to do here. So my wife, the principal applicant, can find this UCI in either her passport stamp or visitor record or visitor visa. It should be this 8 or 10 digit number, very easy to locate. Then let's select apply for work permit for the first time, assuming this is the first time you're applying for a work permit. Then personal details. So again, last name, first name, exactly as per passport. Now, if you don't have a last name, then enter the first name in this family name field and leave this given name field blank. If you don't have a first name, then you can enter this last name in the family name field and then leave this given name field blank. The idea is not to leave this family name field blank because it's mandatory. That's why it's got an asterisk next to it. Then nickname, all these details about sex, date of birth, place of birth, citizenship, all pretty straightforward. Then current country of residence should obviously be Canada. That's a requirement for this work permit. So select Canada. Then these from and to dates are again the start and the expiry of your immigration status currently in Canada. We already talked about this. I've already covered this section in detail in the previous section of the video. So if you're confused about the from and to dates, just rewind back, watch that section and you'll know what to do. Then previous countries of residence. So it says other than current country of residence or country of citizenship. So my wife's current country of citizenship is India, so she doesn't include that. And her current country of residence is Canada, so she doesn't have to include that. So any country other than India or Canada where my wife has lived for more than 6 months in the past 5 years, she will include that country here. If she hasn't, then she can just leave this blank and simply check this box. Then marital status, so my wife will put married and the marriage date will be the date that is on the marriage certificate. Then under name of your current spouse, my wife enters my last name and my first name. Then is your spouse or common law partner a Canadian citizen or permanent resident? So this is obviously yes in the case because I am her spouse and I am a permanent resident. So she checks this box, yes. Then previously been married, so this is no for my wife. Then language detail, passport details, very straightforward. National identity document, if you have, then check yes and then provide details. But if you don't worry about it, just check no, it's fine, it's not a big deal. Then permanent resident of United States, again if it applies to you, then check accordingly. For my wife, this was no. Then next up is contact information. So assume that my wife is currently living with me in Canada, so her mailing and residential address are the same. So she simply lists her current Canada address here and then she checks this box, yes, because her mailing and residential address are the same. Then she provides her telephone details and then here she provides her current email address, the one that she would use to sign up into the GC key and submit her application. Then next up is coming into Canada, so date and place of your original entry. So this is your first ever entry to Canada. So let's say my wife came to Canada for the first time on a TRV in October 2023. So she's going to put that date here. And then the original purpose of coming to Canada. So let's say for my wife, this was family visit. You can select from the options that are listed here. Number 3 is date and place of your most recent entry to Canada, if not the same as the original entry. So let's say you've only entered Canada the one time, so then you don't need to populate any date here because this date and this date is going to be the same, so you can just leave it blank. If however you have had multiple entries to Canada in the past, then first ever entry date gets populated here and the most recent date, the last time that you came to Canada and then began your immigration status, gets populated here. Then for document number, you can check your visitor record or your passport stamp. It should be this number under document number. It usually starts with a letter followed by 9 digits. Then details of intended work in Canada. So for 1, you can simply select open work permit from this drop down list. Then 2A, 2B and 3 you can simply leave blank because you don't have an employer. This is an open work permit. Then for number 4, they've given specific instructions. So if you go back to this open work permit page that we looked at earlier, for box 4, for job title and brief description of duties, you can simply copy and paste these keywords and put them in this form right here in their specific fields. Then 5, 6, 7 you can just leave blank. Then number 8, have you been issued a certificate under PNP? So this is not going to apply to a lot of people, so just check no. If it does, then you can just check yes. Then for education, you provide the details of the highest degree that you've achieved. So for my wife, the highest degree is bachelor's, so she simply provides details of that. Then for employer details, so this is from most recent to the oldest, all employers over the past 10 years. Just make sure you don't leave any gaps in time. If you're unemployed, provide those details too. You've applied for spousal sponsorship, so you already know how this works. You've already done this in the 5669 or the background declaration form. Then next up is background information. So again, answer all these questions honestly and truthfully. If you've had a rejection or refusal of a visitor visa in the past for Canada or for any other country, then just answer yes, and then you can provide your explanation here. Then finally, signature. So if you've already done spousal sponsorship, you are familiar with this process. The applicant, meaning my wife in this case, who's applying for open work permit, signs this section digitally by typing in her full name exactly as it appears on her passport in this box provided using her keyboard. And then she simply puts the date here, and that completes the digital signature. My wife does not need to print this form out, hand sign it and scan it back. None of that. You sign it digitally or electronically by typing in your name using your keyboard. Once done, my wife will scroll down and then hit this validate button. If she did everything right, then she should get this validation successful message like this, and then see these barcodes generated. This form is now complete. Then the last step is to go to file here and hit save and save this form. Then you come back to the GC key, and under this 5710 you click on upload and then upload this saved 5710, and that completes the form. Okay, next up is supporting documents. So the maximum file size that the portal accepts is 4 megabytes. So your documents have to be less than or equal to 4 megabytes. They should not exceed that. If they do, then you'll have to compress them, otherwise the portal will not allow it. And then here are the formats that are acceptable by this portal. So coming back up to supporting documents, number one is passport. So then what you can do is take all these pages from your passport, leave the blank pages out, all the pages that have information, and then you can scan them into a single PDF document. To scan them, you can even use your phone, or you can use a commercial grade scanner in a photography studio. However you want to do it, as long as the scan is clear, you should be fine. Then next up is digital photo. So again, click on this question mark, and under this first category, temporary residents, students, workers or visitors, take these instructions to a photography studio, get the photo taken in a digital format. You don't have to get the physical copy. They can email that photo to you, and then you can simply upload that photo here, and you should be fine. Then under optional documents, this form schedule 1 5257, this is not going to apply. You can simply leave this. You don't have to do anything about this form. Then finally, under client information section, you will upload all your additional documents which we talked about in the beginning of the video for open work permit. So again, coming back to this open work permit page that we saw earlier, under upload your documents, all these documents mentioned here, you should upload them under this client information section right here. So first up is AOR from your sponsorship application. I already showed you. Then a proof of your valid temporary resident status. So that could be your current study permit or work permit or your current visitor record, which will have an issue and expiry date. Then your family information form 5707. We'll take a look at it in a second. Then your marriage certificate or your declaration of common law, whichever applies to you. And finally, if you have any dependent children, their birth certificates as well. Now, one quick thing. In this family information 5707 instructions, it says that the family information form part of the document checklist, you have to upload these documents. But if you go back to your GC key, you won't see a family information section here. So that's fine. Maybe they didn't update it. The idea is you upload all those documents in this client information section. They've only given one section to upload additional documents. So it's safe to upload all your additional documents here. Now you might struggle finding the form 5707, so you can download it from this guide application for a visitor visa. I'm going to link this page in the description below. Don't worry, it does say for visitor visa, but the form will be the same. So again, this form is for the main applicant, meaning my wife in this case who's applying for open work permit will have to fill this form out with all her family information. So first up is section A, applicant. So this is all my wife's information. So her last name, first name, exactly as per passport. Leave this native language section for now because it might not allow you to type native language in this form. We'll take care of it later. Then date of birth, country of birth, marital status, obviously that is married for our case. And then present occupation, let's say my wife is unemployed currently. And then I was physically present at the marriage ceremony. So this has to be a yes. Physically present means my wife was present with me when we got married together in the same location, in the same place. Then next up, your spouse, common law partner or conjugal partner. So this is where my wife will enter all my information because I am her spouse. So first up, will accompany you to Canada. So this is no, don't worry about it because she's already in Canada. I'm also in Canada. Again, my last name, first name, exactly as per passport. Native language, leave it blank. We'll take care of it later. Then my date of birth, country of birth, my current address in Canada, my marital status, also married, and then my present occupation, and then physically present at the marriage ceremony, yes. The next up is information about her parents. So her mom and dad, whatever order you want to go, will accompany you to Canada will be no. And then again, similarly, information about mom and dad populated in these boxes. Then this box, note 1, if no spouse or common law partner is selected, so this does not apply, you simply leave it blank. Then section B, so if you don't have any children, you simply check this box, I do not have any children, and all of that will go away. And then you will have to sign this box, note 2, because you have not listed any children. But if you have children, then you have to provide their information similarly as you provided up top. And then for will you accompany you to Canada, you can just select no, it's not really going to make much difference. For accompanying and non-accompanying dependents, you must have already taken care of them in your spousal sponsorship application. So don't confuse the accompanying, non-accompanying dependent children with this accompanying you to Canada. It simply means that will they be coming to Canada with you? You're already in Canada, so this doesn't really apply. Then section C is your final declaration. So this is where the principal applicant signs it and dates it. Now for the signatures, in this form, it's not really going to allow digital signatures, at least at this point it doesn't allow them. So once you've completed the entire form and filled out all the mandatory fields, you scroll down, don't worry about signature yet, you click on this validate button. It's not going to generate any barcodes, but if there are any errors or mistakes in your form, it's definitely going to point those out to you. So make sure you click this validate button, then you save the form, then you print it out, and once you've printed out the form, the first thing you do is go back up top and write your name in native language here, and all the names of all the people in native language you can write using your pen. And then all the signature sections that apply to you, you can actually hand sign them. So for example, this children's section, if you have not listed any children, you will have to sign here under note 2 box. And then finally, you will have to sign this section C. And then once you're done with your signatures, you can scan the form back again and get ready for upload. So quick recap, here are your additional documents. AOR from your spousal sponsorship, a proof of valid temporary residence status, your marriage certificate or statutory declaration of common law. If you have dependent children, then their birth certificate, and finally, your family information form. What you'll do now is to combine all these documents into one single document, preferably a PDF, and then you can come back to this GCKey portal, and under this client information section, you can upload that single document. Finally, you'll have the fee breakdown. So 155 Canadian for work permit and 100 for open work permit holder fee. So 255 Canadian dollars in total. And once you're done uploading all your documents, the option of next is going to appear here. So simply click on that and it's going to direct you to a payment gateway. Using your credit or debit card, you can just make the payment, save the receipt, and that's it. You're done with the application. Now, what if your sponsorship application is taking really long and you have not received your AOR, but your current temporary status, worker, study, or visitor, is expiring really soon, and now you're worried that you may not receive your AOR and you may actually go out of status soon. Now, normally you will wait for AOR and then you can apply for open work permit, but there are exceptions in place for situations like these. So it says here that you can apply for open work permit without an AOR if you meet these two conditions. Number one, you've applied for permanent residence under any of these two classes, so we've already covered this. And number two is that your current work permit or study permit or temporary residence status is expiring in 2 weeks or less. So if you meet both these conditions and you've not received your AOR for spousal sponsorship, you can still submit your open work permit. So let's say today is January 28th. And your status, your visitor status is expiring by February 10th, so about 2 weeks. So now because you've not received your AOR, but you don't have a lot of waiting time because you may still not get AOR in the next 2 weeks. And then you may go out of status because your current status will expire on February 10th. So in this case, this option allows you to still submit your open work permit application without AOR. So today is January 28th, February 10th is when your current visitor status is expiring and you don't have AOR. As long as you can submit your open work permit application before February 10th, meaning before the expiry of your visitor status, after February 10th, you will be considered on maintained status because of this open work permit application. So until you get a decision on this open work permit application, after February 10th, when your current visitor visa expires, you will still be considered on maintained status, meaning you can stay in Canada legally just because you've submitted this open work permit application. This is the whole idea behind maintained status. When your current status is expiring, as long as you've applied to extend that status or submitted a new application before the expiry of your current status, until you get a decision on the new application, you are considered to be on a maintained status. So you can stay in Canada until you get a decision on this new application. Now, two things to understand about this maintained status. This maintained status is only activated when your previous status expires. So once you send your application for this open work permit, and once your previous visitor status or whatever status you were on expires, that's when you were considered to be on maintained status. Number two, let's say you're on maintained status now. Once you get a decision on your open work permit application, your maintained status would end. So let's say it's a positive decision, meaning your open work permit is approved, then you're obviously on a new worker status, you have nothing to worry about. But let's say your open work permit is refused or rejected for some reason, your maintained status would still end, and then you may go out of status. So what I'm going to suggest is, don't wait until the decision of your open work permit application to decide your next step. It's probably a good idea to apply to extend your stay. So let's say you were on a visitor status before, you can just apply to extend it while you are waiting for a decision on your open work permit application. And this extension will come rather quickly. So that way, even if there is a rejection for your open work permit, you don't go out of status, you still will have the new visitor status which you will get from this extension application. Now let's say for some reason you missed the deadline and you did go out of status, even then there is no need to panic. You still have 90 days from the expiry of your status to apply to restore it. So this does happen to a few applicants, that their spousal sponsorship completes much quicker, meaning they become PR, and their open work permit application has still not come through. So if you're one of them, if your spousal sponsorship application has completed processing, you are now a permanent resident. All your pending application, existing visitor, worker or study permit visas will be voided. So now you are a permanent resident, you can just work freely. So the question is it even worth going through the open work permit application if there is a possibility that your spousal sponsorship application will come quicker than that? So you don't have to worry about all these applications and get tangled in all these maintained status and legal status, out of status, extension and all that stuff. So I would say, even if it's a little bit of trouble, it does make sense to apply for open work permit, because oftentimes spousal sponsorship applications get returned, or they request additional document requests which obviously delay the spousal sponsorship application. So because there are a lot of unknowns, you don't know when you will get a response. There is no hard set timeline for the spousal sponsorship. So you should still apply for the open work permit. That way, if your spousal application is taking really long and you get your open work permit, you will at least have a chance to start making money and contribute towards your family income. Now, as far as the money spent on the open work permit application is concerned, the 255 Canadian, let's say your permanent residence application comes before that, then you are going to get refunded that 255 Canadian. So wait for at least 2 months, you will get your refund within that time period. But in case you don't get a refund, you can come back to this page. This is the page that you use to make the payment. So again, you log in to this page using your registered account, the same account you use to make the payment. So in this page, under My Receipts, you will see all the payment receipts for all the applications that you have submitted. So under this receipt number, you type in the receipt number for your open work permit application, and it should show up here if this is the account that you use to make the payment. And then once it shows up, you simply click on Get Receipt. And if you scroll down all the way, you will have an option for requesting a refund. So simply click that and then you can initiate a request for refund. Now I know it was a lot to take, so go slowly and carefully with these instructions. Take your time. It's not rocket science. Eventually you will get it. And then once you're done, to help you relax, here's a fun pregnancy vlog where I share my wife's 9-month journey, how we made it work. Hope it makes you feel better and look forward to your life in Canada after you're done with this spousal sponsorship process. I'll see you there.